Chip Roy and Matt Gaetz fervently allege that Secretary Mayorkas is being untruthful, pointing to inconsistencies in his statements, including those made in a previous press conference. The video emphasizes a recurring pattern of purported dishonesty in Secretary Mayorkas' statements concerning border control. Let's take a look at Mayorkas being grilled by Roy and Gaetz.
From Texas is recognized. I thank the chairman. Secretary Mayorkas, on April 28, 2022, I ask you, quote, will you testify under oath right now? Do we have operational control, yes or no, end quote. You responded with, quote, yes, we do, period, end quote. I then asked, we have operational control of the borders? You responded, quote, yes, we do, period, end quote. Followed up, I said, I read to you the definition of operational control. I actually held up this chart, operational control as defined under the Secure Fence Act. Put it up for plain reading, plain as day. I put up the second part of the same statute, which defines operational control. Means the prevention of all unlawful entries in the United States, including entries by terrorists, other unlawful aliens, instruments of terrorism, narcotics, and other contraband. I said to you, do you stand by in your testimony that we have operational control in light of this definition? You responded with, quote, I do, period, end quote. Earlier, you testified I didn't give you a chance to finish. Yet you specifically, when asked and held up a statute defining exactly what operational control meant under the Secure Fence Act, you said, quote, I do. I believe that was purposeful. I believe you want the American people to believe we have operational control of the border when we very clearly do not. Less than a month later, in Homeland Security, you testified, quote, under that strict definition, this country has never had operational control. This year, House Homeland Security, then Border Patrol Chief Raul Ortiz testified before the Homeland Committee that DHS did not have operational control of the border, either by the statutory definition or not. Now that is an honest answer. In the Senate Judiciary Committee, shortly thereafter, you testified with respect to the definition of operational control, I do not use the definition that appears in the Secure Fence Act. And the Secure Fence Act provides statutorily that operational control is defined as preventing all unlawful entries in the United States, and by that definition, no administration has ever had operational control. If you will recall when you testified here in front of me when I asked that question, when you very clearly stated, we do have operational control, when presented with the actual definition of operational control, you didn't hesitate, you said, I do, and you in fact then referred back and said, I believe that my predecessors would have said the same thing. I asked Chad Wolf that question in this room, and Chad said, well, no, we didn't use that framing to say we have operational control. We're striving to achieve operational control, but you didn't do that. You looked straight at the American people, straight at me, straight at every person on this committee and said, we have operational control. Why?
Congressman, 2 points. One, you did not let me complete my answer. Two,
hold on, let's give me your second point. Go ahead.
Thank you. Two, the Secure Fence Act defines operational control as not a single individual crosses the border.
I'm aware, I read it, and I read it to you, and you read it, and in fact, you said, I do. You didn't hesitate. You didn't say, I do. I need to explain what I mean by I do. You said, I do, over and over again, and here's the problem with that. This is a pattern. Did you lie another time when you said on September 24th, 2021 at a press conference, quote, we know that those images painfully conjured up the worst elements of our nation's ongoing battle against systemic racism when responding to the alleged whipping incident by the Border Patrol agents who report to you. When in fact, on October 22nd, 2022, it was reported that 2.5 hours before that press conference, Marcia Espinoza, Assistant Secretary of DHS Public Affairs, emailed you and CC'd other DHS leadership, alerting you all that the photographer who took the images did not see any whipping occur, invalidating the initial claim. And it wasn't until May of this year that you corrected the record to say, well, let me just correct you right there because actually the investigation concluded the whipping did not occur. Don Rosenberg, in this very room, testified a few weeks ago that you lie. It is a perpetual pattern, and the fact is there are real people that are impacted by that. We have now had, since you testified, we have had something like 200 people a day dying from fentanyl deaths, which would amount to 90,000 people. I showed you before, when you were here, the lost voices of fentanyl, the hundreds, the thousands of Americans that continue to die, 90,000 since you came into this committee and lied to us saying we have operational control. I yield back.
Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Florida for 5 minutes.
2 million encounters and releases under your watch. So not including the Title 42 expulsions, not including violent criminals. Of those 2 million plus that you've encountered and released, how many have you told to go home?
Congressman, individuals who are released are placed in immigration enforcement proceedings under the law where they can make their claim for relief. If their claim for relief is not satisfied, they are subject to removal from the United States.
Right, subject to removal sounds very different than actually removed. So I'm not interested in the process. I'm not interested in what people are subject to. 2 million people encountered and released. Not the expulsions under Title 42, not the criminals. How many of those people have you deported?
So, Congressman, a few points. Number one.
Just how many of the people? I just want to know how many. It's just a number.
Congressman, we are dealing with a completely broken immigration system.
I get it. No, Mr. Secretary, I'm not going to let you burn my 5 minutes. Do you know the answer? Do you know the number of people out of that 2 million that you've removed that aren't criminals?
I do know that we have removed more aggravated felons.
Right, I'm not asking about them. I've caveated that away, because here's what I'm sort of getting and what your non-responsiveness is demonstrating. The Mayorkas doctrine is this. If you show up at the border and get released into the country, if you don't commit a specific aggravated felony, which, by the way, doesn't include a lot of assault and battery, doesn't include a lot of bad domestic violence, but if you're not one of the people who commit those crimes, you get to stay forever. Is that a fair characterization of your doctrine?
No, that is false.
Then tell me how many you're sending home.
No, that is false.
Okay, well, but you don't know the number of how many you've sent home. Here's another number. 1.2 million people today have been through your entire process, right? They've been through what you call a removal proceeding is just an amnesty dance. Because after the 1.2 million people get an order from the judge saying that they don't have a basis to be here, you still don't remove them. Like, what's your plan to remove those people?
Congressman, that is false.
Okay, how many of them then? Just give me the number.
Congressman, in this country, there are between 11 and 12 million.
Right, but I'm asking about a subset that you won't send home. And the reason you're smirking about it and the reason you won't answer my question is because everybody gets the joke. And the sad thing is it's not just us here, it's the cartels who get the joke too. And so now what you've done to execute this Mayorkas doctrine where so long as you don't commit a crime, you get to stay here and burden our hospitals, burden our schools, burden our social services, burden our jails. You've sent the message to the cartels, and then you've taken this app and you've digitized illegal immigration and you've scaled it to the moon. Like this app that you've got everybody downloading is like the Disney Fast Pass into the country, never to be subject to actual removal, just removal proceedings as you call them. That app doesn't do any search of their criminal history in their home country, does it?
Congressman, I disagree with everything you have said.
Well, I'm sure, but just to answer the question, does the app that you are out there promoting do any search of people's criminal history in their home country?
Congressman, Customs and Border Protection screens and vets individuals whom they encounter.
Your
thoroughly.
app, it either has the functionality to test their criminal history in their home country or it doesn't. By the way, if it did, you'd have already told me. It doesn't. And then the other epic failure of this that's empowered the cartels is that in these processing centers you've set up in other countries to just wave them all in at a rapid pace, you've had to shut them down in Nuevo Laredo because the cartels were standing outside extorting people. Isn't that right?
Congressman, that is false.
Oh, really? So why did you shut down that facility in Nuevo Laredo?
And the point of safe, orderly, and lawful pathways is to reduce the number of encounters at our southwest border.
But wait a second, you've just shifted those encounters, because right now, for the first time in modern history, more people are showing up at the ports of entry than running through some bush in Yuma, Arizona. And the reason they're showing up at the ports of entry is because you've got the turnstile open, where so long as they've gone and downloaded this app, you just let them in. I got one final question for you, and it's an important one. Is Mexico an ally in this fight against illegal immigration?
Yes, it is.
So, I mean, it's hilarious and somewhat troubling that you say that, because like I'm looking at the El Chapo trial where President Nieto took a $100 million bribe from the Sinaloa cartel. Do you think that the subsequent presidents following Nieto weren't offered a bribe by the cartel or didn't take the bribe?
Congressman, I disagree with everything you have said.
Right, but you can disagree all you want, but what you won't provide is any number. And when you sit there and just kind of ostensibly disagree without any facts, it shows people what the real gig is. The Mexican government is captive to the cartels. They are doing the bidding of the cartels, and based on your response today, so are you.